For some Tintin fans it's painful, but the best animated Tintin movie was also the last, until now. It was produced in 1972, while the world was eagerly waiting for the next Tintin adventure. The company behind the project again was Bell Vision. And the story of the movie was not following one of the known comic books. It had its own original script. And script as well as animation techniques improved from the last movie. Calculus came to Soldavia at the invitation of a mysterious patron to work on a three-dimensional copying machine. When Tintin and Haddock, accompanied by the Thompsons, want to visit him, there are several strange incidents. The air taxi that is supposed to take them to Calculus' villa crashes, people sneak around the house, and Calculus' documents disappear. When Tintin's new Soldavian friends Nico and Nushka are kidnapped by frogmen, it becomes clear that a gangster wants Calculus' copying machine because it can be used to make perfect copies of valuable works of art. Tintin hands himself over to the gangsters, and much to his surprise, the gangster boss is an old acquaintance. The screenplay for this movie was not written by Hergé, but by Michel Regnier. You can see this in the script because The Lake of Sharks is very similar to a James Bond story. And the movie even was advertised with the quote, "This is the James Bond of the comic world." In the style of the James Bond movies, the gangster organization is in a secret hideout full of technical finesse, as well as the fact that the villain blows up the secret hideout when he leaves, leaving the hero behind and hoping that the hero will be killed in the explosion. At this point, you have to split the criticism apart. First of all, about the comic book that was designed after the movie. Unfortunately, it has a lot of weaknesses. The story was conceived as a movie and uses many strengths of the medium, which unfortunately cannot be transferred into a comic book. In addition, it is about 20 pages less in length than the other adventures, but a number of parts of the plot are shortened and reproduced in the form of texts. There would have been enough action to extend the comic, but they decided against it, probably because of the complex style of the comic book. The panels in the comic book look as if they were stills from the movie taken directly and edited a little, for example, to represent movement, but they definitely do not come from the movie. You can even see that if you compare the movie and the comic book directly, you will notice that there are differences. Let's take a look at some examples, shall we? This is from the beginning of the movie. This is a scene from the beginning of the movie. Tintin, Haddock, Snowy and the Thompsons are in the airport. They've just been called out to get to their air taxi. Now in this scene, Haddock discovers a poster of Bianca Castafiore here in the background. He makes a face at the poster, then he takes out a match to ignite his pipe. And after that, he's using the same match to draw a mustache on Bianca's face. Then he's leaving, following Tintin and the others. In the comic book, Haddock discovers the poster, then Tintin calls for him, and in the last panel, we see that there's a mustache and a goatee drawn on Bianca's face, and Haddock is putting back a pen in his pocket. In yet another scene, we see the differences between movie and comic book even more. This is when the group arrives at Calculus's house. In this scene, Haddock falls for a three-dimensional projection of a bar, and I was always wondering how could this be, because this is not even realistic. All you can see are the outlines. Well, all this comes clear when you compare this panel to the same scene in the movie. Because there we see that this projection is much more realistic, like a hologram. And for whatever reason, the comic had the style of a cartoon movie with a clear demarcation between foreground and background. And by the time, this comic was the only way to relive the events of the movie again and again, as it was way before the era of video or even DVD. And speaking of it, let's talk about the movie itself. I can highly recommend this. As I already mentioned, it uses some of the medium strength. For example, that slapstick situations can be represented much better. I was laughing out loud at several occasions. For example, Haddock and Tintin end up fighting the bad guys while a television with a football game is playing in the background, and the game's comments fits the fight perfectly. However, in order to enjoy the movie, you have to accept that it's not a typical Tintin story. It's cinema. You can compare it a little with the changes that were made to Ian Fleming's James Bond stories when they were produced as movies. This movie also features a song. It is sung by Nico and Nushka, and it's about the beauty of the Moldavian land. And about people and music and donkeys and stuff, about a lot of things. In the English version of the movie, the song is translated. That's not the case in every version. For example, in the German version, this song is not translated. It is left in French, making it hard to understand by the common moviegoer. Yes, people in Germany learn French in school, but number one, not all learn French in school, and number two, not at the level that they immediately understand a song. I mean, some people don't even understand the English songs, for crying out loud. Oh, and by the way, did I say there's one song in the movie? Because actually, there's another one, a rather short one. Because Bianca Castafiore not only appears on a poster, but she appears as a person in this movie. And she's asked who she is by a policeman. This question makes her burst out in a song about herself that reminds one of the Jewel aria she's known for. And a fun fact, the villa where Calculus lives is situated at the Lake of Sharks. The real name is Lake Vlachichov. The lake is a reservoir. At the bottom of the reservoir is a flooded village. The villains have set up their headquarters in the ruins of the village. In one scene, you see a place name sign that tells us what the sunken place was called. Vogelpick. This is Walloon, and it means bird pecks. This is something very characteristic for the Tintin stories, as Hergé would have done the same with a name. It's really a shame that Tintin and the Lake of Sharks was the last animated Tintin movie. And I mean classical animated movie. It's a great movie, and you should watch it if you haven't. The comic book, well, is nice. Nice to have. Or to have a complete collection of Tintin comics. At least from my point of view. I like the movie better than the comic. And speaking of comics, after this movie it was about time for another real Tintin comic.